Hello lovelies, this is Kimberly Purpoz and welcome to my channel. I found another article that I want to talk about. I want to talk about history. That's right, I want to talk about the history of America and the one-sidedness of the story. For y'all might hear some cars passing by. I'm in a parking lot, so in the background I want you to excuse the noise. But I want to talk about that because when you look at the word history, it says his story. So history are pretty much stories that are made up from a particular point of view or standpoint, pretty much. And if you break it down, you say his and story. And it's like his story. And usually the stories that are written about history were always slanted or had a focal point or a beneficial point or angle or point of view from a European or Caucasian point of view. And I picked up on that, and I think a lot of us need to keep that in mind, that all the history books, everything that has been written and been in school was done based on eugenics and based on keeping this particular narrative going in the books to ensure gray supremacy. And in order to ensure gray supremacy, it's important for them to keep the lies going, even though the story is purely based on their point of view and it does not include factual evidence that may point their stories to be different otherwise. I saw this article about the masquerade settlers. I mentioned the Indian Wars. Y'all may want to go back to my videos. I think that was about a couple of years ago. I believe it was about a couple of years ago, a year or two ago. I did a timeline of the Indian Wars and explained and showed the dates and the times of the war. I didn't go way back. I think I just did over a 100-year time span, but it goes even further back. And I noticed that there were some wars that a lot of the indigenous people have won, and it's oftentimes not publicized or mentioned in history books. They escape over it, and when they do escape over it, they make sure they point it in a negative light. But these are actual victories for our people, and you can see they're trying to paint this negative image of the indigenous people, which is our people, especially on the East Coast. We already know that these Southeast Woodland Indians were us. We see that our artifacts were statues and pictures and artwork during the 1600s showing Indians with afros, with dark colored skin and woven hair. These were our folks. They tried to erase us out of history books and paint and lighten the skin and paint this false narrative in order to give this false story that's beneficial to the Caucasians, and also to make it hard to ensure that we don't try to make sure we don't get our lands back, and know that our heritage that we have to this particular country. But this particular artwork here was completely gray washed, of course. Back then, that a lot of the artists didn't know how to draw Negro features. They drew everybody looking like them. And so you got to remember, a lot of them haven't traveled out much and haven't seen people of the indigenous people very much. So they drew everybody looking like them. So, but these paintings I don't take with a grain of salt, because not every ethnic group look alike. And if they paint a picture where everybody look alike, then obvious this person didn't know how to draw. But this particular story right here, if y'all want to see the more accurate pictures of the Indians, there's y'all can look at some of the books that were written. They go a little bit further back that shows better depictions of what the Indians look like. And You can also look at statues as well. But I'm going on about this artwork. But I wanted to show you how in the stories, the one-sidedness of when you see when a Caucasian won the war, it was glorified. They didn't mention the lives that they killed of the indigenous people. They just made it just like, oh, it's such a great thing, and painted the Caucasian soldiers as being or the pilgrims who did all the mass killings and stuff, paint them as being heroes or gods or great people. But when it's when the Indians won, the indigenous people won, the copper colored race, they painted in a negative light and like it's evil and they're demonic and evil beings and stuff. So you can see how they try to paint this narrative that's strictly based on their point of view. And that's what I have with history and history books. And that's why we got to realize that a lot of stuff that is written in our history books, especially in schools that have been indoctrinated, and a lot of these encyclopedias are heavily indoctrinated, are slanted to benefit great supremacy and from a European and eugenics point of view, which prevents the truth from being shown. So it's based strictly on one side. It says here in this particular article, I found this in the Encyclopedia Virginia Humanities, and I'm not sure if it has an actual date when this was published. Let's scroll. Oops, sorry about that, you guys. Let's scroll down here. It doesn't have a date, but it has here. The massacre of the settlers. It says Virginia Indians murdered women and children in a surprise attack that took place in an English colony on March 22nd, 1622. This fanciful image is created by the renowned de Bry Engraving and Publishing Company in Frankfurt, Germany, depicts Jamestown, seen in the background in European style, moated and fortified village. In fact, the attacks took place in plantations along the James, that's some distance from the Jamestown. The Virginia Company in London issued an official report written by Edward Waterhouse that recounted the event in which 347 colonists, at least a quarter of Virginia English population, were killed. The report stated that the colonists had been executed with the purpose of the utter extirpation. The Indians, according to Waterhouse, were beasts without remorse or pity, a viperous brood of hellhounds and wicked infidels who despise God's great mercies. And that's the end. And it says original author Mathis Marion, and was created in 1634, and it's an engraving. And see right here is these paintings are from afar. I guess if it's an engraving, they sort of painted people all the same color, but we all know that that's our people there. Because we got statues that actually show the actual coloring and skin tones of what the people actually particularly really look like. And see, I want to point out how they describe the people as being beasts, hellhounds, and see, they've trying to paint this false narrative, and just because you believe that they are doesn't mean that's factual. It's based on speculation and based on opinion of a Caucasian. But they don't actually show that the Greys came over there killing their people first and trying to steal land that's not theirs, and they didn't get permission from the Indians to be there in the first place. They just stole lands and spread disease. So that's what I wanted to show is like a one-sidedness in all the storybooks and everything that's written, that's showing the indigenous people in a negative light, but then showing in a positive light the Caucasians. And you also see this in this very day with the media, how they portray blacks, or which they call us blacks now, which I disagree with, the copper colored races as being negative, but then they paint the Caucasian as being pure and godlike, which, like I said, is a terrible, a negative. I personally believe it's not the proper term that should be used to describe Caucasians, because you're not pure, you're not godlike, you're a human being, and you're going to have flaws. And if you're not pure in God, like, you definitely should not be called white. And then your skin tone is not the color of a white sheet of paper. You're darker than a sheet of paper. You give us an extreme dark color, we give you an extreme dark color, which is great. Like I said. So, but I was just talking about how you see these in encyclopedias, the negative image and the negative tone of what the indigenous people is, lacks a balance of seeing things from both perspectives. And I think a lot of that is missing in a lot of the history books, And I think too, I think it's sad. And if it's not based on scientific evidence, they try to make it be that way, but it's not. It's not based on facts that has been pulled, from the actual artifacts. It's based on a personal opinion. Then, like I said, everything is inaccurate, even down to the population size. They didn't have an accurate number of how many people were actually there, so they really don't know. They can't even pull the ships that they claim that they brought over the indigenous people on. So, like I said, a lot of things need to be questioned. Dane Calloway mentions this a lot in his videos. Question everything, and we should question everything, because everything has not been written from a factual scientific standpoint. It has not been written in an unbiased mind point of view. Everything has been written from a Caucasian point of view, and their language, their tongue, from their angle, all the way around. And so now it's time for us to start questioning everything and discredit a lot of the stuff the BS that they try to throw out at us. And since they got away with it for for centuries, for 500 years, they don't want to stop, mentioning, don't want to stop the narrative, but we have to. I wanted to also mention too in this video that my son, he's in school right now. They're forcing him to take a colonization class, a class that's, like I said, is another form of indoctrination, forcing your kids to, indigenous children should not have to learn about colonization. That's something that they try to use to prop up gray Caucasoids, I'm going to say, gray Caucasians' point of view, to self-esteem and make their children feel good about themselves. But it does nothing for our children. If anything, it harms our children, because a lot of the stuff that's written in these books are not truths. It's very one-sided, and it's also inaccurate as to all the things that took place. They try to paint the indigenous people in a negative light. They try to give these slave stories and try to glorify great supremacy, and that's wrong. If it's not based on scientific evidence, it's not based on the remains of archaeological finds, if you're not incorporating scholarly journal research items that's been found by actual scientists in the classroom, then it don't belong in there. It's his story. It's his story, European Caucasian male point of view, or female Caucasian point of view. It has nothing to do with us as indigenous people, and that's something that we should keep in mind. And unfortunately, indoctrination is so heavily instituted into this country. Colonization is also included in some of the tests that they have, especially here in Georgia. And in order for them to pass it, they got to know these crazy false narrative stories that they put in these stories, and in order as a brainwashing mechanism that sort of affects the psyche of our children. So, like I said, these one-sided BS stories is a problem. And like I said, it's definitely an issue. That's why we need to open up our eyes and have a more informed point of view of actually what took place here in the Americas. And also, I wanted to mention that we need to start putting more writings and stuff in place as well. I'm sorry about the background noise. Somebody playing music in their car, but I'm assuming they're going to drive on by. But yeah. So in order to get a more informed point of view in what actually took place, we need to open up our eyes and see what actually took place and create our story. We know that these stories are based on an opinion. It's based on certain people's ideas and everything. And since we know that, we got to realize that it's time for us to create our story as indigenous aboriginals here in the Americas. that is pointing towards our point of view and our mindset. And we need to teach these to our children, for as a legacy so they can know who they are as a people. And also improve self-esteem, self-worth, and in every which way possible. But this is going to be in my video. I can talk on and on about this. I would like to see what you all think. Do you think his story is based on the European point of view? Do you think that it is used as a way of hurting our children in the school system? Is it a form of indoctrination, which I believe it is? And you see this one-sidedness. You see it in media, how they try to portray blacks and the indigenous people as being devils, being evil, being murderers, and being criminals, and all this other stuff. But when you actually look at the actual facts and look at actual numbers, it's actually the other way around. More Caucasian commit more violent crimes than the indigenous aboriginals. That's been proven with the FBI report, but you don't hear that. You see these false narratives on TV and in the media all the time, but it doesn't line up with the actual numbers and scientific evidence. And that's what's missing, the lack of an unbiased point of view through science, through numbers, But, unfortunately, a lot of this is leaked out into the media, which is a form of brainwashing, and that's why I call the TV the brainwashing machine, because everything is based on eugenics. But please like this video. Don't forget to check out my website, Purpoz Counseling and Wellness Center. And till next time, love and peace, family. Bye-bye.